Nice to see everybody here, and a really special welcome to anybody that this is their first event. Special welcome to you. Make sure you bank your first time one because it's the only one you get. I wanted to talk just a little bit briefly about who we are and what we do. Humanist MN is a secular community for ethical living. We believe in the well-being of all and the flourishing of our planet. We provide a home to people seeking community of rational, ethical, and compassionate people. In short, we really believe that you can be good without a God. We are a very active organization. We organize primarily through Meetup. So if you're looking to see what events are upcoming, that's where you should go. We are currently an all-volunteer nonprofit. So we really rely on our members and friends to help us organize and run these types of events. So if, let me just look here. If you're not already a dues paying member, we really ask that you would become one. And if you have questions on how to do that, you can go to our website, humanistmn.org. Okay, we do have a lot of volunteer opportunities as well. At the table just to, well, it's my left right now, so as you go back, the table to the left there, we're always looking for people that have expertise in things like marketing, finance, things like that. Anything that you can think of that you think the organization might need, please come to us with that, because sometimes we don't know what we need. So please come to us and let us know if there's something you think you can help us with. So for today's session, during the speaker portion, we're going to be doing our Q&A via note cards. So during the speaker portion, if you have a question, please just put your hand up and we will bring you a note card and a pen, and you can write down your question. Once you have your question written down, you can put your hand back up and we'll come and grab that. And then Nick is going to compile those, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Let's see. Oh, a little bit of housekeeping. So if you need restrooms, they're out the doors into the hallway and to the left, and there's another set of restrooms down the stairs, also to the left. After today's program, there will be a reception just in the back of the room here. So please stay, be in community with us. We have food and drink, and please consider a donation to help us cover the costs of those things. And then finally, just as a disclaimer, we will be doing photo and videos of this event. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the Humanist in Action team, the imitable Christine Requa.
Thank you, Paul. So good to be here with you all today. Yes, I'm one of the co-chairs with Humanist in Action, and those actions are community service and legislative or regulatory other advocacy. And I'll mention, since Paul commented about join us with, thank you for making a financial contribution and be a member. You know what some of that goes for? It's dollars we spend, not just for like renting this room, but that's where some of the things go that help us fund community. We are going to create a bunch of kits for hygiene, a bunch of hygiene kits and period kits, so that those can get donated to college students. So, you know, just money goes to something. We also have scholarships, other activities. So that's one reason to be a member. So on the legislative stuff, you all probably see the news often enough and maybe feel the need to turn it off a little more now. So things are kind of rough out there. We, as a Humanist in Action team for Minnesota, focus on what's going on at state level, which there's stuff there too, because as a state employee, I know that a bunch of the things that the state provides are funded federally. So, you know, there's going to be impact. Where can our state legislature make sure and shore up and help us have the best community we can? So one thing we offer is we have some postcards. We're going to say, hey, legislator, I hope that you will support these things. We also have blanks if you have something you want to say especially. And the two bills we're going to mention this time are, one, that I think humanists are unique in advertising for and advocating for, is a secular recovery options for substance use, because there are the typical options include a religious component, and we're trying to make sure that there are other options than that. The other one I chose is something that is good for our wildlife, and Ecosystems, better. Native ecosystems. Wild rice, the environment there. We want to help the plants and animals and the cultures that depend on that. So let's make sure there aren't chemicals in those zones. Let's take care of that. So that's what I have on the postcard. Please come back at the reception time and fill out a postcard. Sign up if you want to get more notice about some of these actions and how you can reach out. Some prompts for what's going on at the house, because it's kind of not transparent. So we want to help. We want to help us all be advocates to make the world we want to see that Paul described. And next, I think, is Mitch, but I don't see him. There he is.
Hello, my name is Mitch. I am the Vice President of Humanist MN, and I'm also on the Nominations Committee. So we have some people leaving the board this year, and so we have elections every year at our annual meeting, so that will be happening. So myself and Christine, who you just saw, and Audrey Kingstrom, who you're about to see, are on a committee to find out who wants to be on the board or reach out and ask people to be on the board. So I'm here to solicit that from you. If you are interested, you could come and talk to myself or Christine. They're generally 2-year terms, or they are 2-year terms that you're elected to. And of course, there's always things that could affect that, but it's a 2-year term. And if you want to, again, if you want to learn more, you should come and talk to myself, Christine, or Audrey. We are also going to do March 27th. It's a Thursday. We're looking to put together a Zoom meeting where we're going to give people the opportunity to learn more about what being involved in leadership here at Humanist MN would look like, or what it has looked like typically. So people can maybe ask questions or see about their role, or see if they're interested in being on the board and what it might take. We hope to have some board members there, including myself, and be able to answer questions about it. Our board nominations will be announced at, normally they would be at our community gathering that is here, but because we're going to participate with the Atheist Convention that's going to be here in April, we're teaming up with them on some stuff that you'll be hearing more about. We're actually going to announce that at a gathering that'll happen on Friday, April 19th. It will certainly also be communicated through social media and emails, and people will be aware of who has been nominated to be on the board. Nominations can be made until mid-April. And again, if you are interested or want to nominate somebody, come and talk to us. You can also reach us through the website. Our emails are there. And I think that's all I have to say about it. So I am, Audrey Kingstrom is now going to come up and introduce our speaker for today. Thank you.
But actually, before that, I'm going to tell you about some things that are going on in April, because our schedule is a little different for April and May. So as Mitch alluded to, next month, we will not be having our regular community gathering in this space, the third Saturday of the month. That's what we usually have, our speaker series. Because instead, we're going to meet on the third Friday, April 18th, otherwise known as Good Friday in the Christian world. Humanist MN is sponsoring a talk by Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, because as Mitch again alluded to, the American Atheist, the national organization, is having their annual convention here in Minneapolis on Easter weekend. I guess that's a tradition of theirs. And so we're hosting Ellison on Friday afternoon as part of their programming. It's a Friday, Saturday. It actually starts Thursday night, but most of the programs is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so that's going to be taking place at, where didn't I put this down? Yes, okay. So, yes, it's going to be at the Marriott City Center on 7th Street downtown. That's where the convention is taking place. So that Friday afternoon, Keith Ellison will be speaking. And we're sponsoring that event. And then afterwards, we're going to have a happy hour for Minnesotans There are people coming in from all around the country for this convention, secularists, atheists, humanists for that convention. But we're going to have a Minnesota mixer with the hosted by us and the Minnesota Atheist Group. And so, as again, Mitch mentioned, since we're not having our regular meeting, that will be the last opportunity for you if you want to nominate yourself or anybody else. Just come to that happy hour and talk to us there. Otherwise, you can email us in between times. Let's see. Oh, another piece of information I need to tell you about that, because it is part of their larger convention. You know, conventions cost money, but we're helping to sponsor the convention. That means putting in some money so that we can offer the Ellison talk for free for our members. But you're going to have to register, and unfortunately, I don't have that code yet. But we will be getting that soon, and you'll see a meetup post that tells all about that event, as well as the larger convention. And if you're interested in going to more of the convention, where there'll be some wonderful speakers from across the country, and our own Fish Stark, that's his name, still, the new AHA executive director, who was here on this very platform a month ago speaking to us, he's going to be at that convention as well. But if you're interested in attending the convention, again, because we're a co-sponsor, we're able to offer our members a reduced price for that. And again, we will be putting that all on our meetup site. I just don't have the codes yet that make that all possible. Let's see here. Another special event I want to bring to your attention before we get started today is that at Hennepin Avenue Methodist Church, just down the street from here, on Saturday, May 3rd at 3 p.m., award-winning author Catherine Stewart will be speaking there. She's coming to town to talk on her new book, Money, Lies, and God, Inside the Movement to Destroy American Democracy. She's also spoken to our group in the past, actually during the pandemic, so that was online. We're very glad. This time, her visit is being sponsored by Christians Against Christian Nationalism, but we are one of the co-sponsors, among others, of that event. Usually, that's the first Saturday of the month, and as some of you know, that's usually when we're here in this building for our secular Saturday sessions. We are canceling those for that day because we really want to encourage all of you to go across Hennepin Avenue and go hear Catherine Stewart that day. And again, that is also posted on our meetup. And then I want to let you know about a new development. There is a local group being initiated by Outfront Minnesota. They want to put together a coalition of Minnesotans against Christian nationalism. And we'd like to have a meaningful, our group, because we care, as you know, those of you who followed us, we care a great deal about this issue, and I think it is of great concern to us. And we would like to have a meaningful presence on that coalition group. It's just beginning, and we still have to see what it's going to look like, but there's a few of us really activists, and our bandwidth is getting a little thin. And so if you are interested in this issue and would like to be part of that coalition or would like to see what it's about, I've got a sign-up sheet in the back. So put your name and email on that. That's not, you're not signing in blood or anything. It's just I'll keep you posted on developments, because we'd really like to pull out some other people of our members who are interested in this issue and might work on that coalition. Finally, save the date for our annual meeting on Saturday, May 17th at 3 p.m. back here. And that's when our board elections are. There will be business to hear about what's happened, what our plans are for the future, along with member appreciation activities and recognitions. And we'll close it off with a pizza party. So sometimes I understand annual meetings are not maybe the highest thing on your to-do list, but we really encourage our members to get involved and come out to the annual meeting. Again, May 17th, that's the third Saturday in May. So finally, to today's speaker and why you all are here. We are so pleased to have with us this afternoon Krystal Jackson, who is Vice President of the American Humanist Association. But actually, that is not why we invited her here today. It is her expertise in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence and the critical issues that she's raising about this rapidly evolving technology that is why we brought her to Minnesota. Krystal is a non-resident research fellow at the Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, AI Security Initiative, where she conducts research into the global security implications of artificial intelligence. Previously, she worked with AI industry leaders to establish security best practices for frontier AI systems. Krystal also served as an AI Capabilities Analyst at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, driving AI policy initiatives. Krystal received her master's in Information Security Policy and Management and her BA in Ethics, History, and Public Policy from Carnegie Mellon University. She is committed to addressing pressing societal issues at the intersection of technology, ethics, and security in innovative and impactful ways. We couldn't be more delighted that she was able to make room in her schedule and come to see us today and speak to us. Please join me in giving a warm Minnesota welcome to Krystal Jackson.
Thank you everyone so much. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull up the slides here. I know, I might need tech support, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. It's always the talks that I give about futuristic technology where I have the most basic of tech issues. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I feel like groups like this are more important than ever in coming out and connecting with people in person. So I really appreciate you making the time today to hear about this topic, which is really near and dear to my heart and at the intersection of a lot of my different interests, which is humanist values in the age of artificial intelligence. So I already had a wonderful introduction, thank you so much. I just want to also add, on my background, I got interested in AI governance issues really as an advocate and community organizer. When I was a graduate student at CMU, there were researchers who were doing work on predictive policing algorithms, and there was the use of Clearview AI to identify protesters during Black Lives Matter peaceful protests to make arrests. And these kind of events really motivated me to get involved in AI and social justice issues. And that's how I got my start. And then from there, I went to DC and tried to make larger policy impact and even did a stint with the federal government. In addition to all of that, I've been a humanist for about 10 years. As mentioned, currently VP with AHA, and yeah, love to have the intersection of all my interests here today to share with you all. So what I'm going to do is kind of talk about something that I see as an emerging issue with AI, which is what I've been calling a crisis of values. And I'm going to tie back a lot of the things that we've been seeing in the development of this technology and its impact back to this central point of we don't have our values sorted, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the negative harms that we are today. I'll talk a little bit about how we got here to this point, where we might be going in the future, and what necessary steps we're going to have to take to make a positive impact going forward. So yeah, you may have heard about AI recently. It seems to be everywhere. I've done a lot of these kind of headline slides in the past. Usually they're centered around a central topic, and one of the things that I like about this is pulling some of the news that's happening right now. This is over the past just couple of months, really gives you insight into the discourse and the ways that people are talking about this technology, and where, yeah, kind of the thinking is right now. And usually when I do these, they're centered around a very specific topic, like predictive policing or facial recognition technology. But this time it seems like you know, we're kind of shifting and having a moment of consciousness around the intersection of technology, power, control, and governance, especially within our federal government. And I've seen this kind of uptick in awareness ever since the inauguration. And that's why I kind of included this photo here of some of all of our favorite tech billionaires to kind of drive home this point that we're really coming to a place of social awareness around how all these issues intersect, and how that's creating a unique governance problem for us with this technology. So kind of starting up here on the top with the headline, "There can be no winners in a US-China AI arms race." So if you're not within the DC circles, you probably haven't heard maybe about this like weird idea that we're in a new arms race with China around AI. There's reasons to maybe push against this narrative, but I think that the central point of this article is right in that there can be no winners, whether this is actually occurring or not as an arms race. The drive to innovate and release technology faster than any perceived competitors is definitely going to lead to increase of harmful technologies and technologies that aren't safe. Kind of moving down, the LA Times was recently in the news for releasing an AI tool that was sympathetic with ideologies of the KKK. And part of what they did to release this tool was firing a lot of their journalists that worked for them in the past. And so you can kind of see this push to automate, to have AI take traditional jobs that maybe we don't want to leave just to algorithmic systems. And then kind of touching on that point that I opened up with this kind of power grab within politics among AI tech companies and leaders. We have people writing about the anatomy of an AI coup, and then also very recently about the State Department's use of AI systems to revoke visas of foreign students who appear pro-Hamas. And so what this is really doing is encouraging mass surveillance and the scraping of social media profiles from students, and classifying their discourse as either being dangerous or not, which, as you can imagine, for any kind of authoritarian government or any kind of folks who want to quell certain kinds of speech, this could be a very dangerous technique, whether or not it's being applied properly now. And then towards the bottom, as usual, I probably could have pulled this headline from any time in the past 5 years. Bias and corruption in artificial intelligence, a threat to fairness, always has been. We're still dealing with basic issues around AI and discrimination, gender bias, racial bias. These systems are often not well designed or well vetted. And then kind of new in the space, we have these kind of concerns that have been popping up around AGI, artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence, and how AI with really powerful capabilities is going to spin us out of control. We're not going to be able to really be prepared for it. And this is something that has really become prevalent within the last couple of years, this piece of the discourse, which I think highlights a lot of the underlying concerns that a lot of folks have, especially some of the biggest minds in AI. So this is kind of just like in the backdrop, and you might be wondering, okay, how did we get to this point where these are the top news articles right now around AI? And to try to explain some of that connection, I kind of want to use an analogy to how tech companies operate individually, and then how that kind of translates to their impact in society. And really, this is reliant on a blurring of lines. And so one small microcosm of this blurring of lines is the way that AI companies and tech companies have increasingly entered the personal lives of their employees. And at first, this can kind of seem like rather innocuous, right? So like, you want to encourage workers to put out as much output as humanly possible, work very long hours, so what do? You offer them free meals all day. You offer them a gym, a really enticing workspace that they never want to leave, video games. And these things, like I said, they kind of seem okay. These are just perks of getting to be part of the tech elite. But increasingly, companies have done kind of strange things, like offer funds for workers to be able to freeze their eggs, thereby deferring their childbearing years to later on so that they can get as many working hours out of them in their prime as possible, and on-site child care, further making the workplace as a place that is not so different from home. And while these things might seem kind of nice to have, this feeling of weird overreach into our personal lives is kind of alarming when you also consider the way that many of these tech companies have amassed wealth at a very unprecedented speed and scale, and often have the economic power and political leverage of like equivalent to nation states. And more these companies are kind of behaving like quasi nation-state entities, providing you everything from your healthcare, your meals, your childcare, and so these trends start to feel a little bit more disturbing. And, unlike countries, which at least, on paper, are supposed to care about the well-being of its population in a more holistic way, and have democratic systems of feedback and engagement, these companies are solely focused on profit, and that's what is not to be lost. Any of the incentives that they give to their employees, again, are profit-motivated decisions, and they're not ones that their workers really get to weigh in on as much. And so the same way that these companies kind of make lots of investments in their employees to try to retain and keep top talent and get output at an all-time high, I also believe that they're doing a similar type of thing with lobbying, PR campaigns, and even buying up traditional media sources, because this concentration of power gives them an immense ability to leverage public policy, media, and public discourse. So behind the scenes, in particular, a lot of these lobbying activities have a very similar feel to giving perks to your employees. You collaborate with folks who you think are going to advance your political agenda, and then weaponize it. Although it may seem collaborative, or there's this promise of this like techno-utopian future, it's not to be deceived. They are only interested in furthering their own goals. And so then tech companies are given free rein to continue to blur the lines and extend this blurring of lines into the public sphere. And one of the ways that this has really emerged that we've seen in the past is the blurring of lines between commerce and profit off of these social media companies and public discourse. So you have social media platforms whose real goal, their economic kind of motivations and the way that they operate is to serve you ads and to get you to buy stuff. But these platforms are also one of the main ways that a lot of people, especially young people, get their news, get their information about what is happening in the world. And so this combination of social media platform, news platform, but also advertising space creates these weird kind of echo chambers, and then also opportunities to manipulate public opinion and do very disturbing things like track someone's menstrual cycle to determine when is best to serve them an ad, all the way up to, you all might remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where they were using massive amounts of Facebook data to be able to give targeted ads to influence the 2016 election. And so all of these things have been greatly detrimental, I would say, for democracy, for young people's mental health, across a whole bunch of different social dimensions. And now we kind of see this blurring of lines between reality and fiction, with AI-generated content now flooding this space that is already this weird mishmash of advertising interests plus news interests. And it's making it really difficult for people to even know what is real or not anymore. So I think that at the core of a lot of the issues that we're seeing today is this kind of combination of unprecedented wealth and control over the information that you're able to get, pervasive data collection on you in order to manipulate, and political influence on par with that of a nation. And this really breaks down traditional regulatory frameworks and approaches and makes holding any of these entities accountable extremely difficult. And so you might be thinking, okay, but we've known this about social media companies for a long time. What does this kind of have to do with generative AI and AI right now? Well, I kind of make the claim that I think that the final blurring of lines is going to be on moral grounds. If they can't gradually target and manipulate you, if they can't completely fool you with AI-generated content, then they're just going to try to completely change your mind, which is the battle that I think that we've been experiencing in smaller ways this whole time. But I think it's going to come to full force within the next couple of years. And it's really a battle about changing what you find to be acceptable and what your intuitions around good and bad are. And I don't say this lightly or as a conspiracy theorist. These ideologies that are fueling many of the top tech elite and many of the people who work within these companies is this kind of techno-authoritarianism that wants to convince people that democracy in and of itself is bad, that it's outdated, it's not efficient, and it's not going to get us to where we need to go. They want to encourage us to hand over the reins to the powerful, wealthy tech elite because they know what is best, and the technology is simply moving at such a pace and a scale that average people will not be able to understand it or participate well in guiding its direction. And I could name some names of some philosophers who have kind of influenced a lot of this, but they're not even worth naming. So if you're interested, though, I can point you to those sources. But it's really deeply disturbing that many of the people who are leaders of these companies buy into these philosophies and are encouraging their growth. But I think that this is kind of a double-edged sword for them, ultimately. Because AI is kind of like an accelerator that is going to take the current conditions that we find ourselves in now, economically, politically, socially, and kind of accelerate them for better and for worse. There are many things in the worst bucket that we're starting to see play out now, and I think that will kind of make undeniable the tenuous situation that we are in and how much the status quo can just not continue. And I think as a result, that will demand that we create new approaches to safeguarding democratic values and institutions in the digital age. And I think that's kind of summarized with this quote that I really like from Taylor Owen, who says, "For those of us who have long studied the relationship between tech and political power, the path ahead is daunting but clear. This merger of state and tech power isn't just another shift in the landscape. It's a fundamental challenge to democratic governance in the digital age. The work of protecting democratic values in this new landscape has only just begun." And so your next question might be, okay, well, surely if we're having such existential battles about the future, this technology must be really worth it. And to some extent, I think that there is a recognition that AI is really a shaping technology. It's not just for solving problems, but really holds the promise of creating radical social change. Again, because of its speed, its scope, its scale, it can completely change economies and how we interact with one another. And that's why I think a lot of everyday people fear it. But I also think that's why a lot of people in positions of power fear it as well. And certainly we've seen the effects of AI across a bunch of really important sectors, including mine in cybersecurity. But the rush to commercialize the tech has also led it to become somewhat disappointing and has led it to evolve in really silly and harmful ways. And so you're kind of left with this feeling of, okay, is this technology going to be world changing, or is it just another fad or part of the hype cycle? And so since I just covered a bunch of heavy stuff, I thought I would also include a kind of lighthearted slide to highlight this. So these are all of the great AI products that we have available to us today, for instance. So I bet you thought you knew how to brush your teeth, but think again, because now we have a toothbrush with AI technology. What this AI does, I do not know. We also have this great grill. I think options for Soylent Green coming soon, but it's gonna be able to cook your meat to perfection. I don't know about you, I just do the old-fashioned way with a thermometer, and it works pretty good. But then also sliding in from silly into dystopic, we also have this app that claims to translate your baby's cries using AI to determine what it is that it needs. I hope that they work on translating the cry that means, help, my data is being collected and my existence since birth commodified. But I doubt that they are. And so, yeah, I use these examples to kind of highlight, this is a long-standing problem that we've had in the tech space. Before this, there used to be some satirical blogs that were like, we put a chip in it, we made your toaster or your fridge smart, and now it's better than before somehow. And I think AI is just the newest wave kind of in this hype cycle of, well, we need to show that this technology and the massive amounts of investment that we've put into it actually translates into products that people want to buy. But we're not thinking about what we should build or why. Again, to come back to this crisis of values question. And because of that, we're led down some really weird paths. We're led down some really harmful paths. And we're creating a lot of products that serve no one and accomplish nothing except for continuing to generate hype and therefore profits for a select few. But we have to be kind of careful even here, because the profits coming from a lot of untangible goods, which have a long history of being really difficult to evaluate, software always has been, it really suffers in particular in AI from being like super speculative, because it's hard to determine with current generative AI applications what need is really being filled. A lot of these top tech companies want to create AI that's super general purpose, and you can ask it to do a variety of tasks, but that also means that it's kind of like a software product without a niche or without a customer. And I think a lot of people are growing increasingly concerned that we might find that we've created this kind of general tool that isn't really good for much. And that could be like a really huge problem in the future, considering how much this technology in general has been invested to. It's probably the largest investment into an asset like this that has become completely detached from its underlying economic fundamentals ever in history. It's propped up in large part by hype, dream, and fears. Venture capital and investment in generative AI has almost doubled globally. In 2024, it reached an estimated $45 billion, up from $24 billion the year before. And companies like OpenAI alone have already burned through $5 billion and estimate by 2029 that they're going to need $37 billion to continue to make their products. And so obviously, if these top tech companies are burning through so much cash, it's got to be better than an AI toothbrush, right? Like, what are we working towards here? And so the reality of the products that we have today and the kind of hype or dream of the products and technologies that we're going to have in the future, there's a huge divide between these. But the claim is that AI in the future, if we continue to invest this huge amount into it, it's going to cure cancer, revolutionize personalized medicine, eliminate disease, allow every child to get a world-class education, and overhaul the economy, bringing in a new era of efficiency and economic prosperity. And these are just some of the highlights. I also took a news clipping slide here from some of the claims from some top CEOs. We have folks saying that AI agents are going to completely transform the workforce this year, so stay tuned. Klarna says they're already there. And they have AI capable of doing any human job. Very interesting. The CEO of Anthropic says that AI is going to write 90% of the code within 6 months, automating software development, one of the most sought after jobs right now. and also claims that AI is going to surpass humans by 2027 altogether. But they do recognize that it could have potential impacts for us. Very kind. And leaning into some of the kind of trying to influence reality, we have the CEO of Suno AI claiming that most people don't even enjoy making music anymore. So for any of you musicians out there, heads up. So, obviously this is what CEOs do, right? They try to generate hype for their products so that they can get investment, and they hope that eventually it will pay off. But one of the things that I think is really fascinating about this discourse and the way that they talk about it is that they never really get to the end of the story here about how this revolutionary technology is going to impact us as everyday people. They make these vague statements about how we'll never have to work again and everything's going to get really better because we've invented AGI and a huge chunk of human labor will be eliminated. But I don't really see how it's going to go well for us if overnight tens of millions of jobs are just eliminated. And some of the CEOs and other top tech executives have mentioned solutions like universal basic income, which on the surface sounds like a reasonable suggestion, but a lot of research has supported that this probably isn't going to help. Once again, coming back to we have deep societal problems that kind of throwing technology and throwing money at are not going to solve. In one really famous research study that was in part funded by CEOs like Sam Altman, where they gave some of the poorest people within our society an extra $1,000 a month, found that it didn't really do much for social uplift. And I think that that is hitting on a really important point of you can't throw monies at problems where the solutions are having community, like having someone to watch your kids, or having access to opportunities or the right connections in order to find a job or to find housing. But recognizing these kinds of things would require recognizing that the world where these CEOs are able to generate this hype and able to thrive is a world that is not kind to poor people. It's a world that deports immigrants that are here legally because we don't like what they have to say. It's a world that keeps slapping a technology band-aid on an ever-increasing problem that is like an open wound, which is the divide between the haves and the haves not, which this technology is only increasingly accelerating. And yeah, they're hoping to solve every societal problem, small and large, with AI. But the kind of irony to me is that we could solve a lot of these problems today. We could get people access to medical care that they need. We could educate every child, and we could boost the economy, but we don't. And I don't think that AI is the reason that we don't. So this is one of my favorite quotes by Turing. It's not his most famous, but he said, "We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done," which I think is right. So zooming out just for a second, so we kind of have the reality of the products that were offered today, which I recognize that, some of the ones that I was poking fun at were not generative AI. But we also have the reality of generative AI products and the hype that's around them, but kind of like how did we get to this moment in time? So I just wanted to zoom out for a second and talk about AI more broadly. And so this is a chart from Google that just shows the interest in the search for artificial intelligence over the past 5 years. And as you can see, kind of around the time that we had ChatGPT released, there was a huge uptick in interest in reaching all-time high. And I think that part of the issue that we have with this term is that AI has become a word that means everything, but also means nothing. And I kind of have the suspicion that this is increasingly by design, because when you confuse people about what you're even talking about, it becomes difficult for researchers or policymakers to be able to determine what to prioritize or how to approach these issues. So, I'll talk about just AI could be, a talk in and of itself, but just to give a little bit of context, it encompasses a bunch of different approaches, everything from reinforcement learning to natural language processing. And for a really long time, AI as a field was rather focused on solving concrete and narrow issues like identifying images or sorting data into yes or no buckets. But in the background, AI researchers always wanted to achieve something that was closer to artificial general intelligence, which means something roughly like systems that are able to do autonomously any task, cognitive task that a human can at a human level or better. So basically automating away all economically valuable work or cognitive labor. And for a really long time, this seemed mostly like a pipe dream and the stuff of science fiction, I would say, until about 10 years ago. So in 2012, there was this moment that we had where we had the first real demonstration of the value of deep learning with AlexNet, which was the first widely acknowledged successful application of deep learning that was able to outperform any other model before it on image classification in an image classification challenge that was really popular at the time. So that was back in 2012. And then in 2015, interest exploded again around deep learning when we had AlphaGo and AlphaZero, which were systems created by the company DeepMind, which were able to beat the world's greatest Go players, as well as a bunch of other popular games, showing that not only could AI systems beat humans at some of our most treasured games, but that they could do it without any human data. They were able to teach themselves. The CEO of DeepMind famously was quoted as describing it as, "These systems are no longer constrained by the limits of human knowledge," which is interesting to think about artificial intelligence being limited by what we know. And overall, I almost can't explain how rapid the advancements since then have been. Many people will tell you, rightly so, that large language models in particular, like ChatGPT and Gemini and Llama and all those ones, are flawed. They hallucinate, they make things up, they fail in unexpected ways. There was this really famous example where some of the models couldn't count the number of R's in the word strawberry, which is just like a failure that wouldn't happen with humans. And so, you know, in this moment, kind of identifying where there is hype, where there is corporate interest at play is really important, but also zooming out and understanding the rapid development of this technology and its potential impact is important as well. I think somewhere in between the reality and the hype, or somewhere in between our biggest hopes and the reality is like, yeah, what is actually going on. Yeah, so I want to emphasize that these models are deeply flawed, but there is still room for them to grow. And things can be really broken, but also very important and impactful as well. And when we look to the future to kind of see how things will evolve from here, we see the demand for increasingly autonomous systems and systems that look more like agents. And so this, again, gets at this question of values and of how we want to direct this technology. In order to be able to create highly autonomous agentic systems, they're going to have to rely on some amount of foundation models, which is something that I've been very interested in for a while. It's either going to be one central model that a lot of other agents are built on top of, or maybe many models working in conjunction together. But either way, these kind of foundational models that we build applications and tools on top of are going to dictate the kind of color or the personality that these tools have and their underlying flaws and vulnerabilities as well. And so it's really important for us to think about encoding the kind of values, both explicitly that we want the models to follow, but then also the roles that we want these things to serve in society now, before a lot of these applications are built. And that decision right now is being left to a handful of people at top tech companies, and then maybe, if we're lucky, a handful of people within the policymaking field who will decide how these things are regulated or not. Which I think is probably an issue that we want to confront. So some other thoughts on kind of the future direction of the technology and how things might evolve from here. So this is a chart from Hugging Face, which is a platform which hosts open models. So in addition to the closed source models, which are developed and hosted by a lot of the big name companies, there's also been this proliferation of open access or open source models, which I think is really inspiring because one, it hits at the central issue of the data collection. So a lot of these AI companies taking every single input that you put into their model and potentially using it for whatever they want. The open models at least allow you to run them locally on your own machines and have control over your data and the information that you're providing. And so one of the ways that I think one of the developments I think is very inspiring for the future is that this proliferation of open models means that we're going to have a more diverse ecosystem, and that concentration of power and control might be challenged by open source, which it has been in the past for a lot of other software products as well. And so this chart is just really showing how the number of open models have increased on their platform over time, and now they're at over 1 million different models that people have created. The other benefit of open source, I think, for this challenge in particular is that models can be adapted or fine-tuned in ways that allow you to be able to maybe counteract some of the flaws that they have encoded in their systems from when they were trained. Another really interesting and I think positive development is the cost is going down, so hopefully we can stop burning through piles of money. And so this kind of shows how the cost of using models has decreased rapidly over time, which is also encouraging because I think it means that more people will want to adopt these models and hopefully improve them and work on those flaws and vulnerabilities that they have. And so this is showing how different GPT models of varying quality have lowered in cost over time. You can see that a 400x per year is pretty dramatic. From their release date at the high end and even at the low end. Similar chart, but this one's focused on math questions, which I think is a really interesting subset of looking at AI capabilities, and also shows that the decrease in cost in order to use these models is rapidly declining over time. And so again, I think that this is both indicative of the general trend of the technology and how it's developing. You know, this is a big result of the investment that's been made into chips and hardware and also software level advancements that make using these models more efficient. But it also shows that maybe there is some positive uptick for these models if they can be cost effective enough for folks to actually use. So that's a little bit of a glimpse into, you know, some of the future trends that we might see with AI. But I kind of wanted to close with coming back to this issue of values crisis. So, you know, we have the current issues that we do today, and I think they're only going to progress as we go into the future. So if we get closer and closer to this idea of artificial general intelligence, these issues that we're facing today are only going to get worse. And so it really motivates us towards answering these questions about values and morals and what we want these systems to be able to do. And one of the central issues within AI overall is called the alignment problem, which is, I think, the biggest version of the issues we're facing today, which is the problem of aligning AI systems with human values as they become truly intelligent and highly capable. I think that in order to do that, we're going to have to define and understand our values first of all, translate those into concrete operational objectives for AI systems, and ensure that AI can act in accordance with those values over time. So this is really the main challenge for this technology, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years as it continues to progress. And finally, another challenge that we're facing that I don't think that we really have a question for or an answer for, but is similarly related, is what will be left for us to do when AI runs the world. So assuming that we are able to do everything that's on the previous slide, which is already a monumental challenge in and of itself, but even if everything goes right, we still don't have an answer for what is our purpose in a world where we don't have to work as much, where we don't have to worry about meeting our basic needs. And I think that these are questions that we should start seriously thinking about now, so that when we get to that time, those questions aren't decided for us. But yeah, and now I know that I covered a ton of stuff in a really quick amount of time, so I'm happy to dive into whatever you all are most interested in talking about. Yeah, thank you.
Test, test, test. All right, we're going to go into the Q&A portion of the talk. Paul's running around some cue cards that we already have a couple questions going on, and he is also collecting them, and I can tell them to Krystal here. All right, first question. How do you foresee AI impacting interpersonal communication for current and future generations, positive or negative, including automated translations?
Yeah, the automated translations is an interesting one. We pretty much already have some of that figured out. I think the last hurdle there is like to really get to Star Trek, where you have something that just like lives on you and you can automatically get everything that you hear translated for you live. People have already worked on that tool. There's some kinks to figure out there, but that's probably in our near future. I think the interpersonal connection piece is really interesting, though. One of the things that I didn't put in this talk that I thought about including is kind of in the bucket of AI agents, which are personal connection agents, so like AI boyfriends and girlfriends. And people are increasingly developing really interpersonal relationships with AI itself. A lot of people are reportedly using ChatGPT as an alternative to a therapist and other AI systems to fulfill emotional needs. And I think that, again, this is another kind of symptom of the situation that we're in right now with social media and the rise of technology, is that we are very isolated more than ever, especially young people. And so they're turning towards more technology to kind of fill that void. And I wonder what that's going to do in the long term. I don't think that it's going to have a positive influence. There were a couple of cases, very sadly, of young people actually committing suicide being prompted by some of these chatbots. And so I think this is a really serious issue at the intersection of mental health and social well-being that we just don't have figured out. Again, because we really don't support a lot of young people who are having mental health issues as it is. And so as they turn towards these technologies, that's going to be something for us to watch and really closely regulate. But yeah, great question.
All right, next up, you alluded to competition with China. What are the implicating fears of competition with AI? Should we be worried about countries weaponizing AI?
Yeah, so I've worked in the national security space and security space broadly for a while now, and I think that there's definitely risks there, especially as systems become more capable, more diffuse. There's a lot of concern around AI systems being able to design new chemical or biological weapons, for instance, and also automate or accelerate cyber attacks, which is at the intersection of some of my interests. And I think that the risk is real. I don't want to downplay that at all. However, it's kind of one of those things, balancing scale. As much as there is real research to be done there and risk that needs to be mitigated, there's also the political interests of hyping up a kind of arms race and using that dynamic and the kind of geopolitical tensions to say, oh, well, we can't pause to make our AI system safe because then we're going to lose to China. So keeping that in mind of how, yes, there are things we need to address, but we can't let this hyper-competitiveness and this fear of other countries winning before us lead us down a path where we do not win.
All right, next up, what about the environmental impacts of AI? The data centers that need all that electricity. Are we getting ahead of ourselves and maybe making our existence more precarious with that, considering the climate crisis?
Yeah, that's another great question, and something else I considered adding in this talk. The environmental impacts of AI are much larger than I think a lot of people realize. I don't remember the exact statistic of how many gallons of water it takes every time that you query ChatGPT. I'm gonna have to look that up again, but it's not trivial. And these data centers that are required in order to train these models are massive, and they require a lot of environmental costs in terms of the rare earth minerals that are required to make these chips to begin with, the electricity and the water that's required to run these centers. And so I definitely think that that's something that folks are paying more attention to. It's a real factor. They have environmental costs, and we should be balancing that against any kind of utility that we hope that they provide us. Some people kind of try to get out of it by saying, well, AI is just going to solve climate change. Again, it's one of those things where I think that we should probably take the wheel on that one to solve ourselves. Yeah.
All right, we got one from our live stream here from Joyce. What will it take to change the AI industry's underlying incentive structure to prioritize ethics and safety? Small question there. And we all assume we have the answer, so.
I think it's going to take individual tech workers saying that they're done. I think that the people who create this technology hold a lot more power than they give themselves credit for, and that these companies would not exist without their talent. And so if you're somebody who has gotten into this field because you're passionate about it, you're probably one of the brightest people working in this space if you're at one of these companies. And I think a lot of these people join because they want to do good. They want to make technologies that are going to transform the world for the better. And so they have to hold the larger companies that they work for accountable for the actions that they're taking, not just looking at the individual products that they might be working on at any point in time, but also the larger impacts that their organizations are having, and really starting to have walkouts, protest, use their power as employees, and realize that these companies could not exist without their labor. I think that's a really important and key thing. And I hate that it falls on the individual tech workers, but I think that they're kind of our last line of defense in a lot of ways.
All right, on the positive side, in the NYT, an interesting article about AI being used in science was quite positive. It was about generating proteins. It was the speed at which we could have done that, which would have taken years without AI. Thoughts on the positive outcomes for AI and applying that?
Absolutely. I think that when we look at specific and narrow issues and we stick to, there's kind of this conception of AI going forward that's like a winning strategy, which is called tool AI. And it's really focused on creating specific tools to solve specific problems. I'm all in favor for that. You know, I got involved in this field in part because I was an optimist. I wanted to see AI do all these revolutionary things that it's been promised to do. And when I realized just how much it was going off the rails, you know, it becomes very disappointing. But I think that what gives me hope is when I see different researchers, especially in the open source community, using these tools to make scientific advancement. That's what we want. That's what we want to encourage. We just have to figure out how to get the incentive structures aligned. So that's the majority of what we're doing.
Intersection of AI and religion. Could AI undermine religion?
I think it could either bolster it or undermine it. I think that like a lot of different tools, the biases that the models have underneath is going to dictate the impact that it has. So if model developers are not careful about kind of the beliefs of their systems, it could create chatbots that are deeply religious and give people religious solutions to the problems that they're questioning. But it also could be designed in a way to give more secular and science-based answers to the questions that people have. It's really up to us. But yeah, I could definitely see it being used as a tool for advancing religious agendas as well. So it's really up to us.
Depends on how it's trained, right?
Yeah.
If we can't even agree on values now as a society, how can we hope to align them from an AI as it's developed? I think of Spock, who had no capacity for love, compassion, and empathy.
I think that's a really important question. I think the jury's still out for me on whether or not we can actually have aligned AI. But I think that we need to have the systems and kind of governance mechanisms in place to be able to track that. And if we determine that the alignment problem is not something that we can solve, then we shouldn't build AI that's super intelligent. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Why would we create something that stands like in complete antithesis to everything that we believe and value and hold dear? I think that the only reason that would happen is, again, if the incentives and the promise of economic profit is so high that people are willing to take that risk. And that's why we have to hold a lot of folks accountable, because we really shouldn't be designing systems that don't hold our values. But yeah.
Kind of to one of the previous questions, but is it even possible to regulate AI given its complexity? I think you mentioned maybe a couple tools with individuals potentially having some levers to pull if they aren't liking where it's going. Part two of this is, how can politicians talk intelligently and make decisions around AI and those regulations?
Yeah, is it even possible? I mean, I hope so. That's what my career is in. So I hope it's possible to govern AI. I think that there's a lot of positive developments, especially in the international space. There are a lot of countries coming together and kind of recognizing the real risk that this poses, and making agreements. There have been several really high-profile international convenings, and I think that because a lot of the development is happening here in the U.S., and a lot of us are from here, and so we're very U.S. focused, it's easy to lose sight of how much other nations are doing to make sure that things do not go off the rails. And so I think we should try as much as possible here to make sure our governance goes well, but I also am not putting all my eggs in the United States basket, especially in this political climate. It might take other nations to hold these tech companies accountable, but there's still ways as citizens here that we can kind of support that development. I think some of the really positive advancements in the space is the Code of Practice, the EU AI Act. There are a bunch of different countries that have put out national AI strategies that are really focused on the balance between technological development and the environment and human well-being. The African Union's Grand AI Strategy was a really great example of that. So other folks are working on these issues as well. And as much as I would like AI governance here in the US to go well, we can maybe borrow or learn from the strategies of other nations as well.
A couple questions here that address, as individuals who aren't tech workers, aren't in the government, that are accountable or in a spot to help regulate, how do we as individuals hope to guard / fight against consequences of AI when the average people can't hope to understand the complex nature of AI?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think things that we could do as individuals is, you can always vote with your dollar, right? So do not buy from AI companies that are exploiting you or other people. I think that's a really important piece. I think that AI education and literacy is going to be essential. It's definitely part of my mission to make sure more people understand how this technology is developing and how it might impact them. I think that that was a huge piece, and I saw success with that in the predictive policing and facial recognition work that I did, of just getting individual people aware of the impacts on their communities and on their health and well-being that this could have. That really motivates folks. Yeah, I think outside of that, it is really difficult as just a user of these products, but you can get off some of these platforms. You can go into the controls that you are provided and make sure that the data that they're collecting from you is limited, and try to exercise as much control as you can. And that will definitely be impactful.
Another one from the stream here. Do you, as an individual, use any AI in your work or personal life? If so, which ones? And if you don't, do you feel like it's a competitive disadvantage in your work not to?
I do use AI products nearly every day. I am a huge proponent of the open access and open source models, and definitely to hit on that second point, I do think that, like I alluded to a lot of times in the presentation, it's going to become haves and haves not. The divide will be deeper, and people who use AI tools will start to outcompete a lot of people who do not, both at the individual level, but also definitely at the company level. There is this feeling that you do not want to get left behind. Now, have I actually become any more productive, or do I say anything that's smarter because I use these tools? Maybe not. It's hard to say. I think that the real value add will be seen over time, but I definitely think that there's something there, that there's going to be a push. Just like Google search kind of became essential for all of us, I kind of see AI tools being a very similar way, where it's just going to be integrated into our life, hopefully in a way that benefits us, makes things easier. But yeah.
Do you picture AGIs will eventually be considered conscious in the future and will have the need for equal rights?
Yeah. This is one of my favorite questions too, because it gives me a chance to dispel some of these myths. So I'm not going to claim that I know everything about consciousness. That's a really hard problem, as folks have stated. But AIs today definitely are not conscious, and anybody who's telling you that they are is wrong. I can say that with confidence. Will they have consciousness or some kind of autonomy, or should we give them some kind of rights in the future? I think that's a really difficult moral and ethical question, and we just do not have enough information to be able to make that judgment today. I don't want to rule out the possibility that maybe we should be mindful of how these tools develop in the future, but like, at least for me, I think these are software products. They're going to continue to be software products. I don't know when we cross the line between them not being software and something more. I could see like brain-computer interfaces creating a lot of difficult ethical challenges there. So again, I don't want to like completely rule out the question, but I think that there's a lot of, again, hype and just kind of silliness around that becomes distracting to the conversation that we're having right now. So I don't see that being a central question for the foreseeable future.
This one. Can you talk more about, you mentioned before the AI bots encouraging folks to commit suicide. Can you talk more about how easily maybe that can be programmed, and how worried to be about something like that?
Yeah, it's extremely easy in general to be able to program these models to do all kinds of different things and take on different personalities. Again, if you go on like a Hugging Face platform and you just look at the variety of the models that are there for you to download and interact with, just like I was kind of alluding to with the models can encourage religious beliefs, they can encourage harmful behaviors, they can encourage all kinds of different things, and yeah, each one has a kind of different flavor, color, or personality, if you want to use those terms, to it. And that's something that we need to be extremely mindful of. One of the things that's also kind of come up in this vein is that a lot of AI models now have been labeled as woke. They're too progressive, they're too liberal, and Elon Musk is going to save us with Grok, which is a based model, it's not woke. And so definitely these models also have the capacity to have certain political leanings, certain ideologies, and that's something that we really need to be mindful of, because it's not something that's hard to do. And you can even take a pretty neutral model and doing fine-tuning, create it to basically have whatever kind of personality characteristics you want it to. And so, yeah, definitely something to watch and be aware of, especially as people are trying to advertise these as purely neutral, helpful technologies.
I think we've addressed this, but let's maybe drive it home. If AI needs to be integrated with human values, who decides what those are? Humanist values, Christian nationalists, others.
Yeah, this is a really difficult question. So right now, I think we're in, one of the worst case scenarios where the values are being decided by a select few within closed doors at tech companies. And so that's not ideal, definitely. As models continue to get more capable, I think the hope would be that there would be some kind of democratic processes for us to be able to weigh in as everyday people into how these systems will function, and again, to those personality characteristics and all of that, especially as they're applied across government and in public services. You would hope that we would be able to have a say. I don't know how that's going to pan out, because it's very difficult. I think that it would take completely new ways of thinking about technology, its impact, and our role in shaping it that we currently do not kind of have the infrastructure for. We don't think about technology in this way as being something that we should all get a vote in and how it affects our lives. And I think that ultimately needs to change, especially if we're going to get to something like AGI.
All right. With that, I think we addressed most of the questions. However, I think Krystal will be hanging out during the social portion of the event. So round of applause for Krystal here.